So, before we get into the sermon, today's kind of a unique day. There's a lot of, let's just call it Coptic confusion going on in today. So what's something unique that you may have realized what we're doing today? We're praying in a certain tune. We're praying in a joyful tune, okay? So we're praying a joyful tune. Why? 29th of the month. So the 29th of every Coptic month, we kind of commemorate the Annunciation, the Nativity, and the Resurrection. So we're doing things in a joyful tune. Today is also the 5th Sunday of the month. So normally there's 4 Sundays. When there's a 5th Sunday, you might hear it referred to as the Sunday of blessing, okay? Because it's nice that we get to pray 4 Sundays out of a month, but man, when we get to throw an extra Sunday in the same month, it's a blessing. So normally the readings that we would do on the 5th Sunday would be appropriately 5 loaves and 2 fishes, because out of little we made much, okay? So the theme of blessing is there. But see, today's the 5th Sunday, and it's the 29th of the Coptic month, so we prayed a joyful tune, but we didn't read the readings of the 5th Sunday because the very last week of the year contains the smallest Coptic month of the year, which is only 5 days. So a lot of times this Coptic month doesn't even get to see a Sunday. It could be like a Monday and end Saturday, and then never gets to see a Sunday. And so what happens whenever Mishor, which is the current month that we're in, has 5 Sundays, we take the last Sunday, and instead of doing the readings for the 5 loaves and the 2 fish, we bring in the Sunday reading for the short month, which is Nessia. Okay? So we read the readings of Nessia, which are today, which happen to be the same readings as last week. Same idea, different book in the Bible. Today is from Matthew, last week was from Mark. Alright, so it's a little bit, a couple things going on today. Just want to take a minute to talk about it. Just because it's good to be knowledgeable about what we do and why we do. So, having said that, today's gospel comes from Matthew 14. Sorry, Matthew 24, not 14. Matthew 24. And there's actually one little word that I want, or one phrase that I want to be our focus today. And it's the phrase, and because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. And because lawlessness will abound, the love of many will grow cold. And in last week's gospel and this week's gospel, what we're talking about is the coming of the end of the world, the second coming. And so this one is kind of unique. It's in one sentence, so there's some sort of correlation. That when lawlessness abounds, the love of many will grow cold. So it seems to be linking up the ability of love to stay strong, okay, to the idea that love is related to laws, okay? But for our purposes today, instead of using law, which can be kind of like a rough word, and not a word that we necessarily think of day in and day out in our interactions, I want to use, instead of law, boundaries. Because even when we use the word law, essentially what we're doing is we're setting up boundaries, okay? Like a law tells me I can't go here, and likewise a boundary tells me I can't go here. I can stay here, but I can't go here. So the correlation is that love goes cold and dies out when there's lawlessness, but when love has laws, or for our purposes today we'll say boundaries, that love is able to stay strong. So, let me give you an example. Okay? Nice cup of water. What can we use this water for? Humor me. Drinking. Why is water good? Most of our body is water. So we're giving it most of what it's made of. Okay? So this water can be used for nourishment. This water can be used to do good things. Okay? And this water can be transferable from one cup to the other. Alright? So as long as this water is bound by the edges of this cup, it can be used for good. What are we going to use that for? But it's water. All of a sudden, the water outside of the boundaries or the laws of this cup has lost its value. Sure, we can say it's water, but like, you gonna go drinking off the floor? I'm not gonna go drinking off the floor. The water has lost its purity. The water has lost a lot of its value because all of a sudden the water is no longer within the boundaries of the cup. We like to think that love has no boundaries and love like goes to the end of the world and love can do all things, which it can't. But love's got a lot of work to do, and in order to do that work that love can do, that only love can do, love needs to have boundaries. Because I can say, well, that's water, and this is water, but which water are you going to use? You're going to use the water that is confined by a boundary. Alright? If your feet get wet while coming up for communion, I apologize in advance. When Jesus walked this earth, his love had boundaries. We frequently look and say, well, Jesus' love was endless. And I agree, his love was endless. But his love had boundaries, because if his love lacked boundaries, his love would have lost character. If his love lacked boundaries, his love would have no character. Let me give you an example. There were a lot of demands on Jesus to go here, to preach here, to walk here, to heal people here. He knew the source of his love was coming from the Father. So how did he continue to feed his love? He said, I know there are all these demands, but my love has a boundary that must stay within the communion between me and my Father. Therefore, even though there's all this to do, I'm going to take time to pray. His love had boundaries. There were needs. But he said, love has boundaries. And the boundary is that I must stay here in communion with my Father. People ask Jesus to do many things. Perform miracles. Come over here, heal this person. Come over here, talk to us, preach to us. Did he do something that was outside of the will of his Father? No. Every interaction that he had with somebody, whether it was healing or talking or preaching, was within the will of his Father. So his love had a boundary of saying, I will not breach the will of my Father, which started to create and give his love form. It gave it direction. It gave it power. It gave it a character that this world had never seen before. So because he chose to live, and his love had boundaries to it that kept it pure, that kept it the amazing love that we're able to spread with all, but it still has boundaries. Like it was a gift to us. His love had boundaries. And we just talked about two. Boundary was one, his communion with the Father, and another boundary was his obedience to the Father. If for the sake of love, he would have taken outside of the will of the Father, and action would have taken him outside of the will of the Father for the sake of love, you might question, well, was it the love of the Father or not? Because he was here to give us the love of the Father. So his love had boundaries. Love has boundaries. To say love doesn't have boundaries, meaning that love has no character, love has no spine. Love can be whatever we want it to be. But love with appropriate boundaries, just like the cup of water, that's the water that you want to drink. The water that's on the ground that has no boundaries, it's not going to do much nourishment to us. In our interactions with each other, do we lose our boundaries for the sake of love? Do we let our boundaries get crossed for the sake of love? I read a story one time, two parents who went up to a counselor and they said, look, we are so tired of our son. He is driving us nuts. He's 23 years old. He is sitting at home. He's involved with drugs. We don't know what to do. We can't get him off the couch because we can't get him off the couch. Come and fix him. So the counselor started to ask him questions. He's like, okay, well, wait a second. So I started to ask him about the history of, like, well, what happened? And I said, like, well, when he was growing up, like, we always made sure he had everything he had, everything he needed. When he went to college, we made sure that he had plenty of money so that he wouldn't have to work, so that he can focus on his studies and also focus on have a social life. And then even when he flunked, and failed out of school, we worked with him and we got him into another school. And finally, like, he passed, but now he doesn't want to look for jobs. And he's just sitting on the couch, and we're just growing tired of him. So he looks back at them. He's like, well, this is what you made. You thought you were loving him, but you loved him without boundaries. Like, no matter what he did, you just, as parents, just kind of scooped him up and said, don't worry, I'll make it better. Don't worry, I'll fix it. Don't worry, I'll do all these things. And he said, because you loved without boundaries, you created the son that you have before you. And as he looked at the parents, he could realize that their love for the son, their son, was growing weak. And they were getting tired. And they didn't know what to do anymore. Why? Because they, under the name of love, gave things without boundaries. But, over the course of the years, it chips away at us. Chips away at our ability to love. And at one point or another, we're going to grow cold if we continue to give love without boundaries. God gives us amazing love. But His love has character. His love has direction. His love has boundaries. And that's why His love is very different than the love that we commonly see in our society. And so I know it's maybe an uncomfortable thought to think, well, love should have no boundaries. But in order for love to be love, it has to have boundaries. It has to have boundaries. And so in the relationships of your life, where you feel it started off like this, but over time, it's just like, I've enjoyed it less and less and less, and this, the love that I have for this person has just grown cold over time. Those are the relationships where we have to look and say, well, wait a second. Did I have appropriate boundaries on this relationship? On the love that I was giving this person, did I have appropriate boundaries? Boundaries that would allow my love to continue to grow and be meaningful. But when I have lack of boundaries, as Scripture tells us today, that because lawlessness or lack of boundaries abounded, love grew cold. So in the relationships of your life, where love has grown cold, take a hard look at yourself and say, have I loved this person with boundaries? If you have loved this person with boundaries, you will find the strength to continue. But if you loved without boundaries, slowly and surely love grows cold. Love grows cold. Which is what we also see in this world going on. And so we'll take a minute and highlight. the relationship in your life that you feel love has kind of grown cold. And say, have I loved with appropriate boundaries, or have I loved carelessly and without boundaries, and therefore my love is wrong? Glory be to God.